Welcome back to Predicting the NFL with Mickey G. We're getting ready for the week 2 of the 2025 NFL season. And, yes, to address the elephant in the room, I did get a haircut, okay? It's a little shorter than I would have liked. It was a new lady that was doing it, which means I also got a discount because she was new. So that was cool. But, yeah, it is a little shorter than I wanted it to be. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before anything else. Also, update on the sports betting, because we all know that sports betting is sick, and I said I was going to do it, and so now here are the results. So on Thursday, I put $80 in, $5 for each game, and I turned it into $127. So that's almost $50 profit there, which is pretty good. Now, to be fair, there were a couple extra bets in there besides just them, because I was like, oh, it's too good to take. I mean, I had to bet on Oklahoma getting the spread against Michigan. That was huge. Had to bet the under in the Iowa State game. Another easy free bet. I mean, I just couldn't just not get free money there. And there's a couple like anytime touchdowns and stuff that I also grabbed. So you're probably wondering, well, then, with all these extra bets, what actually was the change in from just the games themselves? Well, since I did so well, I actually turned $80 into $101. So $20 profit is pretty nice. Obviously, it's only $5 bets. I can only earn so much on just money line bets straight up. So not a ton of cash there, but $20 is $20. You know what I'm saying? And if I continue to earn money like this, then if I get to 160, then I can do 10 buckaroonies on each game instead. So, big things could potentially happen if we get to that spot. So keep your eyes peeled and excited for that. But that's enough about sports betting. Let's talk in general about how the last week went. So I went 12-4. Like I said, I had a great week. It's the best week 1 that I have ever had. The previous best was actually last year's with 10-6. Previously, we were honestly pretty bad in week 1s, just being barely over 500 for the most part. So last 2 years, we've been kicking it. We got the game of the week correct. Crazy one there. Bills pointed out at the end over Baltimore. Upset, we did get incorrect. It was so close to being correct, though. If the Browns kicker did not absolutely blow chunks everywhere, that would have been a huge upset. And it would have been a nice payday, too, because, the plus money and all that. Crapfest, I was correct in. The Cardinals were able to take care of the Saints. Not shocking there. The Jags also won, so my pick and the Jersey team, first Jersey team correct pick in week 1. First Jersey team to win. I had a previous pick correct before. First Jersey team win in week 1. So that's how week 1 went. Obviously, that's what the totals are for the season so far, so I don't need to worry about that. So let's talk about historically how we do in week 2. Historically in week 2, we are 56-40, so well above 500 there. 3-2 in games of the week, 2-2 in upset, so one of our better upset weeks for sure. 3-2 in Crapfest, so not great there. 2-3 teams are when I wear their jersey, but my jersey picks are 0-5, so that's not great. So we're hoping to change that this week. That's enough about last week. Let's talk about this week and our predictions. So first on the docket here, our Thursday night game, we have the Washington Commanders at the Green Bay Packers. Now, both these teams had pretty impressive wins over their opponents. The Packers, however, their opponent was much better than the Commanders. Packers absolutely smashed the Lions, and it was really beautiful for me because I got to watch Jared Goff stunk. I got to watch Jared Goff truly stink up the football field, which I always enjoy doing. Commanders beat the Giants also pretty easily. But I think the Packers win was more impressive. I think they're just better overall, and Micah Parsons really elevated that pass rush to a whole nother level. So that's big, and that's also helpful for containing Jaden McDaniels, which will be a big thing for the Packers to do. So starting off there, I'm taking the Pack. Next is the Rams at the Titans. The Titans looked atrocious. Bo Nix had one of the worst games of all time, and they still lost. So that's pretty impressively bad. Their offense, I think, had like negative 2 yards or something in the second half. Something real stinky. It was net yards or something. I don't know. It was bad, okay? Titans looked terrible in the whole game, but especially once the Broncos kind of locked in and Bo Nix stopped giving the ball to the other team, it was just not even a game anymore. And the Rams, on the other hand, they were able to beat a pretty solid Texans team, a little less points than I would have wanted them to get, but they still able to come out with the victory. So that's not going to change here either. The Rams should be able to take care of business against Tennessee. Next is the Giants at the Cowboys, and this is our Jersey game of the week. And I remembered that I actually have stats about these things, so we're going to talk about it. The Giants are 2-4 in Jersey games. The Cowboys are 2-0. I am 4-2 in picking Giants games in the Jersey games, and the Cowboys are, and my picks are 1-1 in Jersey games involving the Cowboys. So, what's going to happen here? I'm picking the Cowboys, okay? They looked significantly better than I thought they were going to. They had it right down to the wire with the Eagles, who I previously had them as my number 1 team, so that means a lot. And the Giants, they looked terrible, worse than I expected them to. Nothing going offensively or defensively. It was just gross to watch on both sides of the football. So the Cowboys surprised me, especially Javonte Williams having a really solid game. And hopefully my pick will be correct, and then we will finally have a correct Jersey game prediction in week 2. Next is the Niners at the Saints. Like I said, the Saints are not good, okay? They're maybe the only team worse than the Titans, I think. They look bad, they are bad, and the Niners, they did look a little worse than I expected, but that's also due to tons and tons of injuries. And another key injury for this week, well, one, Kittle is out, and he will be out for the next couple weeks or so. They have put him on IR. And also Purdy's expected to miss this game. Mac Jones will be getting the start, which I think is a pretty big move, but not necessarily in the way that you might expect. Purdy did not look great against Seattle, so this might potentially be helpful. I think as Purdy has gone on in the NFL, teams are starting to learn his tendencies, and so the Shanahan offense is only helping him so much. So Mac Jones, a fresh face in that offense, might be just a bit of change to confuse those teams. Plus, it's against the Saints, so they should be able to win this no matter what. Just give the ball to McCaffrey, who looked great. Not a ton of injury showing there in that one for him, so he looks good, and the Niners should be able to win this one easy. Next is the Bills at the Jets. Well, the Bills look like the best team in football right now. Came back from down multiple scores to the Ravens at the very end of that game. They never counted themselves out. They came back and they won the game. So that was super impressive from them. And the Jets scored a lot more points than I expected, but also against the Steelers that I don't think are particularly great either. Nothing really exciting from the Jets there. I don't think anyone is beating the Bills right now. They were able to beat the Ravens, and I think they can beat anyone after watching that game. So I'm going to go with the Bills here in this one. Next is the Patriots at the Dolphins. Dolphins look like the worst team in football. I didn't quite put them below the Titans and Saints in my power rankings, but they might deserve to be there, honestly. The Patriots, on the other hand, they had a tough loss to the Raiders, but I think that's going to be fixed up. A lot of these guys just didn't get involved in the offense enough as they should. The Diggs had a pretty small game. Ramondre Stevenson had a pretty small game. I think that's going to be able to change, and especially against a team that looked so bad in the Dolphins, I think this is going to be a big win for the Patriots to help with their confidence, and Vrabel is going to get them on track. Next is the Seahawks at the Steelers. Well, I mentioned how the Steelers, I'm not super impressed by them. They were able to beat the Jets, but I don't think the Jets are great. I don't think they're great. I think both teams are worse than people think they are, and they looked exciting in that game because it was an exciting game, lots of scoring, but I think there were so many miscues on both sides that against a better team, it's going to be a different outcome. Seahawks, their defense looks pretty great. They had a couple miscues on defense that allowed for the Niners to end up winning it, but for the most part, their defense looked pretty solid. Their offense a little slow to get going. Kupp not super involved. I would like to see him involved more. Darnold should hit him pretty easily. JSN, on the other hand, looked great as per usual. Those Buckeye receivers are fantastic. I am, however, going to go with the Steelers here. It's at home field advantage. Steelers are able to win these games, especially early in the season. They win this stuff a lot. Expecting another fall off here in the back half of the season. But for now, I'm going to go with the Steelers. Seahawks, I don't think are anything special this year, but they did play better than I expected them to. So props to them. Next is the Bears at the Lions. The Bears looked bad. Caleb Williams did not do much great at all. He had a nice scripted drive. Once they got past those 15 plays, though, it was like they completely fell apart. Defense got a nice pick 6 on J.J. McCarthy, but besides that, both sides of the ball didn't do much of anything positive for the majority of the game. They look really disappointing, and I don't even think Ben Johnson can fix Mr. Williams. The Lions, on their hand, you can definitely tell they missed their 2 coordinators. I think also Frank Ragnow retiring hurt them a lot more than you might expect. So they looked a little rough against the Packers, but here's the thing. The Bears looked significantly worse against a worse team than the Lions did against a better team. So I think the Lions are going to be able to bounce back from that a lot quicker. They also have the pieces and the players. And while as much as I hate on Jared Goff, he can get the job done. All right. It just needs to go against a team that's not destroying him, basically. So the Lions should be able to get this one. It should be fairly easy for them. Next is the Jaguars at the Bengals. So Jaguars had a nice big victory over the Panthers. Yeah, it was the Panthers, so not a hugely terrifying team. But this is a team that, even against bad teams like that, a lot of times they would stay close and you would kind of get worried for a bit. I was never really worried in that game at all. The defense played fantastic. Offense, for the most part, played really well. Trevor Lawrence had the 1 interception, but that was also just a crazy play from Horn. Bengals, on the other hand, they had a stinker against the Browns. They would come up with a victory just because of missed field goals. But they really didn't look anything spectacular. Their offense barely put up 150 yards, if even that. Jamar Chase didn't get anything going. Burrow got sacked a bunch of times. I mean, they just didn't look that great really at all. They just kind of got lucky of how the Browns just kind of gave them a couple turnovers. I'm also actually going to be at this game, and historically, I have not gone to a Jaguars game where they have lost. I was at the Steelers game 2 years ago where they won, and I've gone to a couple Browns games as well, which they've won both of those. So not looking good for the Bengals if I'm going to be in attendance in Cincinnati. So big things happening there, and I'm picking the Jags. I mean, they impressed me last week more than I expected, and so I think they're going to take down the Bengals. Next is the Browns at the Ravens. Like I said, the Browns looked... I mean, they should have won that game against Cincinnati, but they didn't. Ravens should have won that game against Buffalo, and somehow they didn't. But one of these was a loss to a team that I don't think is great, and the other one was lost to a team I think that is really good. So I think the Ravens are getting this one. Not a big shocker there. They're very heavy favorites. Next is the Panthers at the Cardinals. This is our crap fest of the week. Second crap fest in a row for the Cardinals. And interestingly enough, the Cardinals are 5-1 in Crap Fest, so they're pretty good here. Panthers, however, are 1-0, so both teams historically pretty good in the Crap Fest of the week. However, my picks are not necessarily the same case. I am 0-1 in games where the Panthers are in the Crap Fest, and I'm 4-2 though in games where the Cardinals are in the Crap Fest. So that usually means that I probably pick the Cardinals, and I'm actually going against that, and here's my reasonings why. So, one, I think the Jaguars are very good, and so that's why they beat the Panthers so badly. Two, I think the Saints are really bad, and the Cardinals barely beat them. So I don't think the Cardinals are super great, and I think the Panthers have a decent shot here. Ted McMillan looks really solid in his debut, and I think they're going to be able to clean up a few of those things. And their defense, for the most part, didn't play badly. I think they're just going up a really tough Jags team. I think the Jags O-line is a lot better than it has been in years. I think a lot of that's helped to the scheme that they're now running. Whereas I think the Panthers' defensive line is actually decent, and they just still weren't able to get in there. Cardinals didn't really do anything that impressed me, and also a lot of people are putting the Cardinals in like their top 15 teams in their power rankings, which doesn't make any sense to me because I don't know what they did to deserve that. Whereas the Jaguars, a lot of people are putting in the 20s, so this is kind of my like response to that, where I'm picking them to lose, and it will be huge if they do lose to a team that everyone already knows isn't great, that the Jaguars destroyed. So there's a lot of ego thrown in there. So even if this game is close and the Cardinals win, I'm still going to feel vindicated from that because the Jaguars blew them out. But that's whatever. So yeah, I'm going with the Panthers here. Bit of an upset, but they are the crap fest of the week. Next is the Eagles at the Chiefs. This is our game of the week. Big shocker here. Super Bowl rematch going on here. The Eagles are 5-0 in games of the week, and the Chiefs are 9-4. So both teams historically really good in these games. My picks, however, not the same. 4-1 when the Eagles are in the games of the week, and the Chiefs 6-7 in games of the week. I feel terrible after doing that. But yeah, they're 6-7 in games when my picks are 6-7 when the Chiefs are in the game of the week. Saying that is just very confusing to my brain for some reasons. I keep stumbling over it. But so a lot of times I feel like I probably pick the Chiefs to lose and they end up not because the Chiefs have been so hard to read the last couple of years just because they're winning by barely anything, but they also win every time. So it's just stupid. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Chiefs, and here are my thoughts. They're at Arrowhead. That's basically what it boils down to. Both these teams looked worse than I expected them to, whereas the Eagles came away still with the win, but that's because they were playing the Cowboys, who I think are worse than the Chargers. That's why the Chargers were able to win that game, kind of thing. So I'm going with the Chiefs here. They're in Arrowhead. That's big. And same kind of stuff I said last week about it's the last hurrah potentially for Kelsey and stuff like that. So I think they're going to be able to get this one and break the undefeated streak for the Eagles in games of the week. Next is the Broncos at the Colts. We have our horsey matchup. The Broncos last week, they had stinkers offensively from Bo Nix, but defense looked amazing. And the Colts looked really good against the Dolphins. Dolphins looked terrible. I don't think it's going to be the case here. I think Bo Nix is not going to have 2 games in a row where he looks absolutely horrendous. I think the Broncos are going to be able to shut down the Colts offense. I think Daniel Jones is going to have a lot of mistakes in this one that's going to cost them. As impressive as the Colts looked last week, I think it's also a lot to do because of who the Dolphins are, rather than who the Colts are. So I'm going to expect the best defense in football to be able to take care of business here and beat the Colts. Next is the Falcons at the Vikings. This is our upset of the week. The upset might surprise you with who it is once I get there, though, because this is based on the betting lines, at least as of now. So things could change, who knows. This is also a Sunday night game, by the way. But anyways, the Falcons are 1-3 in upset picks, or in upset games. The Vikings are 3-1 in upset games. And my picks are actually the exact same as their records are. So my picks are 1-3 when the Falcons are in upset games, and my picks are 3-1 when the Vikings are in upset games. I don't know if those directly correlate with when I pick them to win or not, but apparently they correlate. The Falcons played a really good game against the Buccaneers, who I think are one of the best teams in football, especially from the offensive side of the ball. So that impressed me a lot. They only lost because of a missed game-winning field goal that usually Younghoe Koo does not miss. So that was a big surprise. And the Vikings, on the other hand, barely snuck past a Bears team after being terrible and down for so long in the first 3 quarters, where J.J. McCarthy looked absolutely terrible. And then I think KOC just kind of was like, all right, we got to change this, and knew what to do. I'm putting all of that on KOC and not on J.J. McCarthy, who for some reason won NFC Offensive Player of the Week. Which is insane to me considering he threw a pick 6 that was just absolutely horrendous and played terrible football for 3 quarters. But what do I know? I'm going to go with the Falcons this one. For some reason, the Vikings are favorites in this. I think it's because of what KOC did last year with Darnold, but really was different than how Darnold looked last year. Darnold looked good from the start kind of last year from what I can remember, whereas McCarthy looked terrible. It's just that the Bears looked even worse, and that's what kind of switched the game for them. So I think the Falcons will be able to take advantage of that, and after a pretty solid game from Bijan Robinson, I think it's going to continue, and Michael Penix looking solid as well. That's going to be a nice big victory for them. Next is the Buccaneers at the Texans. Buccaneers, I think, were pretty solid, able to come out with a sneaky victory over the Falcons there. The Texans lost to a good Rams team. Defense played better than I expected. Offense played worse, or played about what I expected offensively, but the defense did a really good job. However, I do think the Buccaneers, after having their offensive line the way it was, they're going to have an extra week of practicing for that. I think they're going to play a lot better offensively from the start rather than catching up. And Emeka Egbuka had an amazing game that was super impressive. So I think that can continue here, and the Buccaneers will get this one. And finally, our second of the Monday night doubleheader, because Buccaneers-Texans is also a Monday night game for some reason, is the Chargers at the Raiders. Chargers looked amazing last week. They beat the Chiefs, which was a big surprise. The Raiders were able to beat the Patriots, which was a good game for them. But, I mean, compared to the Chargers and how they did, I don't think there's really much to talk about here. Justin Herbert is starting off on an MVP caliber season, and I think that's going to continue here. I think the Chargers go take care of business there in Vegas on a Monday night. Well, that's all for this week's predictions. I'll keep you updated on how the betting goes along with it. And I hope you come back next week and watch more ball knowledge. Let's see if we can get that 14-2 mark from the week 2 of years past, but not holding my breath in that direction, to say the least. Anyways, thanks for watching. Come back next week and learn some more ball.
6,700.